There you go. Hey everyone, it's Walter from e38registry.org. It's going to do a very quick something that I've been meaning to do for a very long time, kind of like a driving review of my E38. So for those of you not familiar with the car, the E38 was the generation of BMW 7 Series produced from 1995, model year 1995 to 2001. They actually started production in 1994 with a few test mules, I believe, from late 1993. The design was penned somewhere in the 80s, I believe. All that information is online. Why do I like this car? I think that's a question I actually get asked very often because, I mean, it's an old car. At this point right now, it's 15 years old. Like, you know, these cars are pretty much worthless. You can get them for less than the price of a Honda Civic. If they're not, you know, in good condition, which most of them are not in good condition, unfortunately, you can get them for, like, even less. In my case, this car was in need of repairs, as many of them. And I got it for less than the price of, you know, like a Coach handbag. Like, it was dirt cheap. So why exactly do I put myself through, you know, this kind of torture? It's not a very reliable car, first of all. So if you want to buy a cheap BMW to impress your friends at college, don't buy this one. Buy a 3 Series, buy a 5 Series, buy something with a 6-cylinder engine. Preferably a manual transmission is going to give you a lot less hassle. The V8 is kind of a finicky engine. The V12 is a lot more reliable, but pretty expensive. I mean, you're going to be doing $700 intake gasket jobs. That's kind of a pain. And plus the usual BMW cooling system issues and so on and so forth. So anyway, why do I like it? It's a James Bond car. It's pretty much the only recent affordable James Bond car, actually. One that has had a central piece in a movie. Aston Martins are very expensive. They're never going to be worth $2,000, ever. It can be a shell caught on fire, and it's probably going to be worth more than $2,000. It has pretty good driving dynamics for what used to be a large sedan. These days, it's about the size of maybe somewhere between like a 3 Series and 5 Series, but for the time, you know, late 90s, it was quite a large sedan. Pretty responsive handling for you know, a beast that's like 4,000 pounds, or God knows how heavy this car is. And it has a lot of, like, lots of creature comforts, if you want to call it, that are very common in cars these days, but you can't really get on a car that's, you know, costs like $2,000 to $5,000. So let's talk a little bit about my car, which is, you know, the one I have. This is my third E38, and the previous two have died horrible deaths due to timing chain guide failure. The first one was a 96. I think the previous owner might have used conventional oil with very generous oil change intervals. Anyway, we opened up the engine. It looked like mousse inside, like literally like chocolate mousse. Not something you want to see. Anyway, I drove it. I got a good 40,000 kilometers out of the car before the timing chain guides just basically disintegrated. The second one was one from that actually my dad bought from a guy on Bimmer forums. The car was okay, was reasonably well taken care of. Lots of shortcuts in the car, unfortunately, lots of like broken trim pieces, so on and so forth. Wasn't exactly the best example of the E38, but had like really cool modifications, like a sweet headliner, hydraulic trunk. It was a long wheelbase car with a semi-automatic Steptronic transmission, which apparently was not available in the US. So, and had some extras from the 750IL, like some extra wooden trim in the B-pillars, I believe. It was okay, but it also died a horrible death due to broken timing chain guides and ended up being part out. So a couple years ago, I came across this one on Craigslist. It needed a lot of repairs, basically, and I got it for a really good deal. Performed the repairs myself, obviously, because, and that's another thing, if you're taking this car to the mechanic, you're going to get taken to the cleaners, because it's really expensive. Keep in mind, it's still a BMW. It might be a 15-year-old BMW that's worthless, but if you take it to the mechanic, you're still paying $100 plus an hour of labor, and it's finicky, and a lot of things are labor intensive. You're going to spend a lot of money. You're basically going to set the money on fire because you're never going to see it again. So anyway, let's go back to talk about this one specifically. This one's a 2001 740i Sport with the V8 transmission, V8 engine, and the Steptronic transmission, 5-speed ZF 5 HP 24, reasonably reliable, you know, ish. I mean, my car has about 240,000 kilometers, and the transmission is still working, which is, you know, pretty good. It has the 3.15 rear end, which gives it quicker acceleration than the long wheelbase and the regular models. Some people call this car an M Sport. That's not how BMW sold it back in 2001. They just sold it as Sport. They weren't, how can I say, very active in diluting the M brand as they are these days, where they'll just stick M badges on anything. It was just called a 2001 740i Sport. Mine specifically has the M Sport suspension, though, which basically gives it slightly lower ride height and, I believe, firmer springs. Does not have the electronic dampening control, which is excellent because that thing is super expensive to repair and super hard to find parts for. What else? Park distance control. So the parking sensors, front and rear, which is pretty cool. It has navigation, very, very primitive. My maps are from like 2001, so I guess it's better than nothing, but not something I would be depending on day to day. It's also obviously not a touchscreen, so you gotta use the knobs. Not very intuitive, but hey, for 2001, this was the bee's knees. This was good. What else? It originally came with a sports interior, black sports interior, with heated seats, 18-way, I believe, heated contour seats. I swapped it out, one, because I didn't really like the bolsters. They're kind of hard. They're not very comfortable. They're great for performance driving, but again, this is a 7 series. It's not an M5, so there's a certain limit as to the performance driving that you're going to be doing. So I swapped it out for a very, very nice set that I got thanks to a guy named Dale out in England. He was parting out an individual 740i Sport? No, I think it was a regular 740i. Anyway, he was parting out an individual one with this absolutely beautiful interior. It's gray with black piping. We thought it was the high-grade Napa leather, but it's actually in really, really good condition. It might be the more durable but technically lower grade Montana leather sewn and cut like Napa. One of those crazy, weird European options. Anyway, very, very comfortable. Picked up a pair of front active seats. They're the ones that have the massage function. Really good for long road trips. It really reduces fatigue and pain, a little bit of pain in the leg from sitting too much. Great. I mentioned already the heated seats. That's really, really good. What else? Stability control, standard, obviously, like most cars of this era. This one has rain sensing wipers, which is nice. It's basically you just put it on the first speed for wipers, and it adjusts the speed according to how much rain it detects in the sensor, which is stuck to the windshield. So it's pretty cool. What else we have here? This car specifically has a chrome line package, so it's got these bits of wood and chrome, the handles, the shifter, some chrome accents, sunroof, obviously, which is pretty important. Other things that oh yeah, and you can probably see it in the video. There's a black, the center console / armrest here in the back is black. It's supposed to be gray, however, I need a different bracket for the gray one anyway. It'll get done eventually. I have a fridge that I have to install for the car. I picked it out of an E65 at the junkyard. It's not a direct fit, but, you know, we'll make it work. And that was a very, very, very rare option on the E38. You could only really find it on the L7s, which is where the really long wheelbase ones, the actual limousines. And on some 750ILs, it was an individual option. I know of one car in Vancouver that has the original factory one, but the owner is not interested in selling that car, unfortunately. Yeah, it's really a nice car. It's very comfortable. It does 0 to 60, or sorry, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in roughly 6 seconds. Quarter mile, I believe, is like 15.9, 16 seconds. Yeah, it's not really impressive. I know that a Toyota Corolla, or maybe not a Corolla, but I know a Camry, like the Camry V6, pulls similar numbers. But again, this car's 15 years old, and the new Camry is like, you know, fully loaded one's going to be like $35,000, maybe 40, and you won't get like this level of options and this level of comfort. So for 10% of that, you know, I'll take it. I won't be running with the Ferraris and the Porsches, but for 15 years old and, you know, $2,000 to $5,000, that's like a really, really, really good bang for your buck. Let's talk about problems on the car, things that you should be aware of if you're thinking of getting into one of these. Timing chain guides are the big one, okay? A lot of cars have timing belts, which you can service. Timing chains, unfortunately, are a little bit more complicated. On this car, the guides are made of plastic, and after a lot of time, they eventually break. My car is getting up there. It's got 235,000 kilometers right now, almost 236. They typically fail in the 200 to 270,000 kilometer range. And when they do, you hear a diesel-like noise out of the engine. It starts to lose power. That's because it's disintegrated and your chain is kind of slapping against the valve covers. That's really bad. If you hear a car with that, you run away really, really fast unless you're paying like $500 on it, or it's like a rare model. It's inexpensive. It's a really, really, really expensive repair if you take it to a shop. To do it yourself, you're looking at about $1,000 in parts. Well, $500 to $1,000 US in parts, depending on what you want to do when you're in there. And my recommendation is to do as much as possible, especially like heater hoses in the back, valley pad, intake gaskets. Replace everything on the way because you do not want to do this job again. Mechanic book time for the job is about 40 to 45 hours. So you can just, you know, do some math in your head and see how much that would be at a mechanic. It's going to be super expensive. That's one of the things. Cooling system, as in any BMW, is weak. You will most likely have to replace a water pump or expansion tank or a split hose somewhere. Good news is that they're cheap. Expansion tanks are cheap. Water pump is cheap. Don't get any of the crappy eBay ones. You're going to regret it. Transmission is reasonably reliable. The 5HP 30 that comes in the old 740i's made up until mid-98, and in the 750i LV12, it tends to be more reliable than this one. But these, I mean, this one is going at 236,000 kilometers. It's still working fine, shifts smoothly, no issues. I've seen many transmission failures, but usually at 300,000 kilometers plus. So, but you know, eventually you will have to replace the transmission or service it. If you want to rebuild it, like if you're really good, you can probably get a rebuild kit for like $400 or $500 and do it in your garage. If you want to pay someone to do it, it's like $3 or $4 grand, or you can just pick up a used transmission for $500, have somebody put it in and drive it until it blows up again. That's the route most people go. Suspension is not really expensive. There's good brands for reasonably cheap. You can rebuild the entire front end for, don't quote me on this, maybe $600. I don't know, check OEM, Bimmer Parts, FCP, Euro, the usual places. The brakes on the car are pretty good. They actually last a reasonable amount of time. Rotors are cheap, pads are cheap. They're really comparable to Ford. Yeah, otherwise there's no like major issue that will want you to, how can I say, there's no issue. Like, for example, the Cadillac North Star engine in the old Cadillac STS, where the head gasket would go, and there would be nothing that you can do other than throwing away the block and putting a new block in. That's it. As far as I know, I looked into owning these cars a few years ago, and there's nothing you can do. There's no fix. There's no updated head gasket. There's nothing. It just goes, and that's it. And this car, there's a timing. The only real issue of the engine is the timing chain guides, and you can do it preventatively. And you know, if you have good mechanical knowledge, it's labor intensive, but it's not a difficult job. There's a ton of write-ups online. The AC, the condenser sometimes goes. It's an easy job, but it's extremely time consuming because you have to disassemble the entire interior pretty much to get you. The easiest way is to take out the seats, take out the center console, take out the dash, and the heater core is below the dash, or a condenser, I forgot the name. That's kind of a lot of work, but you know, otherwise it's fine. If you take good care of these cars, if it's well maintained, it's gonna last you. If you find one with timing chain guides done, then you will very likely not have any engine issues, you know, for 200,000 kilometers. That's how good it is. The engines are very solid. There are many cars in Europe that I know of that have over 500,000 kilometers, but everybody's doing the maintenance, everybody's doing the oil changes, everybody's following the maintenance schedule. And they have replaced timing chain guides, but you know, you do it once. If you have a Toyota with a timing belt, you're replacing it every, I think, 120,000 kilometers or something like that. And if you're taking it to a mechanic, you're going to pay maybe $2 grand on that timing, or on the timing belt job. With the BMW, you get 250,000 kilometers out of the timing chain, and you pay $4 grand, maybe $5. You know, it's not bad. Transmission, going back to it, has the semi-automatic mode, so it's good if you want to get that feel of a manual transmission without actually having to shift gears in heavy traffic. You just leave it on automatic as much as you want, but if you're on a twisty back road and you want to have some fun, you can easily switch it to the semi-automatic mode. What else do people ask? Fuel economy. Let's see what we have here. I'm getting an average of 15 liters per 100 kilometers premium. 91 gas. Some people run 94. I don't think it really makes a difference. The manual says 91. I put whatever's on the manual. 15 liters per 100 kilometers. I drive quite a bit on the highway. It's mostly just a pleasure car these days, so it's fine. If you're going to be really hammering it in the city, your consumption is going to be probably around 18 liters per 100 kilometers. Heavy highway driving, you might get it down to 12. I've gotten it actually down to 10 on one of my previous E38s, 10 liters per 100 kilometer on the highway on a trip to Seattle, which was pretty good. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about fuel economy. If you're buying this car, you're aware that the fuel economy is non-existent. It is what it is. And the V12 is obviously worse. Sound system is pretty good. At this age, most of the speakers are probably blown. You might have to replace speakers. Lots of the North American market cars came with the the DSP, digital stereo processing, whatever it's called. It processes the signal in a separate amp, which is kind of bad because if you want to upgrade the speakers or install like an auxiliary plug, as a rule, you have to just rip everything out. It's kind of a lot of work. One of the things I did, I have an auxiliary plug here, but I did not rip anything out, which is kind of cool. So here's the plug. Just plug in like a cell phone or whatever. What I did, I read, there's a do-it-yourself on e38.org from Bimmerboard, where you basically just splice into some wires behind the navigation unit or in the trunk if you prefer, and you run into an external amp, and then you basically cut out the tape input so that you have direct access to the speakers. It's not bad. The sound quality is okay. Only cost me like, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks. I think I made a couple videos to kind of show the setup. So yeah, pretty much it. It's a nice car. I would hazard a guess that it's probably the best bang for the buck on the used car market right now, with a big asterisk that you have to have some mechanical knowledge, otherwise you're going to be poor, or you're going to be very frustrated, mostly on the forums all the time, and expect to be stranded somewhere, because again, it's a car with like 250,000 kilometers, a finicky car at that probably has not been maintained to factory specs by the time you get it. So if you're okay with that, it's an excellent car. It's very stylish, it's very beautiful. I really can't say enough about it. I really like the design, and you know, I think, like, for me, like, this is the last really nice BMW design. All the cars that came afterwards, the E65 and the I mean, I guess the E90 is fine. It's not ugly, but the 7 Series that came after this, all of them were pretty ugly in my opinion. So it's a cheap. It's very, very, very cheap. Just make sure that you're handy, or if you're not handy, you have a mechanic that you can trust, and budget for very expensive